And hello, my students. It's your favorite teacher, Mr. Jacobson. I'm excited to be here with you. This is the final installment that we'll be doing as a webcast for medieval Europe. The last and final will be the Black Death, something that you guys became very familiar with our Black Death cards, and uh, and also about famine, which ultimately led to more death. So, very interesting topic today. I hope it's not too depressing, but it needs to be discussed because during this time there's a lot of disease, a lot of famine, and probably wasn't a great time to be alive in comparison to what we have today. So, let's begin. Okay, so we have a medieval climate. It became a warmer period. What did that do? It made things easier. Agricultural production increased. Growing seasons were longer. Farm productions increased. Population in Europe doubles because if there's more food, then more people can eat, and there's more food to go around. There's less famine, and people get to prosper. So during medieval times, the climate became warmer and allowed for farming to occur. And here we have here's just a graph if you like to pause it and look at it, it'd be fine. And then there's a little ice age, a little rainfall pattern in the agricultural production. Winters were colder and longer, summers were cooler. Glaciers expanded in size. During 1350 1317, there were devastating rains. Harvests fell throughout Europe. Cooler temperatures resulted in a shortage of salt, which was collected by evaporation methods, and a decrease in salt led to shortages of preserved meat. Here's the population as you can see, and it's mainly on the uprise. Of course, it does have a dip here, which is the whole reason is the Black Death. So, interesting stuff to discuss. Now, the Great Famine started with weather changes in the spring of 1315. Northern Europe suffered major crop failures from 1316 to 1317. The effects of famine lasted about 1322. The Great Famine was responsible for the deaths of 10 to 25% of the population of northern European cities and towns. The Great Famine led to widespread doubts about the church and the strength of medieval government. I'm not going to read this out to you, but you could pause it and take a look just to get an idea of how dire the situation got. Now, the Black Death was a massive epidemic of the bubonic plague caused by bacteria spread by fleas carried on rats. The Black Death is estimated to have killed between one-third and two-thirds of Europe's population. From 1347 to 1351, the loss of so many people due to the plague destabilized Europe's political, religious, and economic systems. It's hard to defend your country if half your people are dying. You can't. and and if half the people are dying are people who are government workers and people who keep stability and law enforcement and everything, then you have a serious problem of anarchy and instability. And so it was a difficult time. Here we have in Caffa was a city port, which is now Ukraine. It was controlled by Italian city of Genoa. The Kaffa link the land caravan routes of Mongolia and China to ships traveling to Europe. So this was kind of like a segue point from China, Mongolia area to Europe. It was a kind of a halfway point, maybe a little more than halfway if you're going from China to Europe. And this is where things are going to start becoming, well, bad. In the 14th century, the Black Death had already spread throughout Asia. The Tatars were fighting the Genoese in Kaffa. The plague infected Tatar soldiers. It is recorded that in 1347, the Tatars stacked the bodies of the dead like cords of firewood against the city walls. So, Europe had already been severely affected by the Black Death, and now it's making its way slowly in. I'm sorry, not Europe. Let me repeat that. Asia had already been severely affected by the Black Plague, and now it's working its way into Europe. The Tatars placed freshly dead corpse on their soldiers in uh, Trebek and flung the bodies over the city walls into Caffa. The plague simply quick spread quickly throughout the city. The people of Caffa fled to Genoa and other Mediterranean cities, taking the plague with them. Anyway, sorry, I had a bit of a brain lapse here. This word is pronounced trebuchet. So anyway, older you get, the more moments you have like that.
Munchausinism, Munchausinism, Munchausinism.
Okay, so we have the plague, the European timeline. The plague spread from Asia to Europe as infected rats were transported by ship down rivers and across seas. This whole theory it's changed, it's morphed a little bit through time. Now they're saying it wasn't rats, it was gerbils. I really don't know. We're gonna stick with rats because that's the majority of the people who think it was from rats. So here, just go through here and you can see how slowly these areas and cities slowly fell to the devastating disease. So the map of the bubonic plague here, and you can take a look and follow the key on that. So it arrives in Messina, Sicily. The first recorded appearance of the plague in Europe was in Messina. It was throughout the plague that the plague arrived on. It was through It was thought, that the plague arrived on ships from the Black Sea which passed through Constantinople. These ships carried luxury goods such as silk and porcelain and brought along the Silk Road from China. Now the plague arrived in Genoa, Italy, and spread to Pisa. From Pisa, it moved from Tuscany to Florence to Siena and Rome. From these large port cities, the plague spread into southern and northern Europe, and it's spreading quite quickly. Here we have all these major cities. As you can see, they're all by most of them except Florence is by the a large body of water. This is how it was depicted in the streets of Florence after the devastating plague had hit. You could see people lying dead on the streets. Just a horrific sight. Here's a map here just to give you a better idea. You can pause it for your own satisfaction if you like. So now the plague is starting to travel. It started here as far as coming from Constantinople area and coming here, and now it's going to start spreading into France, from Italy, Germany. It's even going to go in parts of Russia, and eventually to England as well. And here you can kind of see the chart of the death tolls, and there's something very significant about this chart, which we'll discuss when we come back. The Black Death in England. The plague arrived in England, and it spread quickly in neighboring villages and hamlets. The disease spread to Bristol, Gloucester, Oxford, and London. So here's the estimated population of England, and the Black Death really took a huge chunk from where it left it. And we'll talk about the social consequences now. So finding blame. People wanted people to blame for this. So what did they do? They blamed people, made them feel better. Scapegoat is someone who was made to take the blame for a problem that was really not his or her or their fault. Minority groups and social outcasts were made to be scapegoats during the plague. It's interesting how the Jews were kind of the scapegoats. Also, other scapegoats in history were like gypsies and other small minorities as well. Lepers were persecuted and completely killed off in Europe. Leprosy was believed to be a defect of the soul. Anyone with leprosy or even signs of skin disease was thought to be of the devil. Even people with severe acne became scapegoats and were killed. Organized mass murders of Jews called pogroms occurred throughout Europe. They are going to go a long time in Europe and even into Russia prior to World War One. Amadeus the Seventh, Count of Savoy, ordered the torture of Jews and forced confessions from them. Under torture, many admitted to causing the plague. By 1351, thousands of Jews in at least 200 towns and hamlets were murdered or burned alive. It's interesting. They think torture is gonna give them the answer they're looking for, but it's really not. It's not always the truth because people say anything really when they're under distress like that. So burning of Jews. Well, I'll just let you read up on that. Actually, it's just awful. It's part of history that people should never be proud of. Consequence to the church: the death rate from the plague was the greatest in prisons and monasteries. Up to two-thirds of the monks and priests of England died. The church replaced the priests with young, experienced men. The new priests created many problems. Many people turned away from the church. The plague killed so many people, including priests, that the church could no longer perform last rites. Pope Clement the Sixth granted remission of sins to all who died of the plague. The Pope also allowed people to confess their sins to one another, even to a woman. This gave new power to women in the church. Now, last rites, if you're not sure, it's at the bottom, also known as the sacrament of the infirm, a ceremony performed for the sick and dying. Now, if you got millions of people sick and dying, there's just no way that a priest or priests or 100 priests could get to all of them and give them their last rite. Peasant revolts. Black Plague was followed by many peasant revolts. Peasants revolted for many reasons. One, growing gap between the rich and the poor, dissatisfaction with the nobility, increasing power of the nobility as a result of low agricultural prices. Serfs left their fiefs in search of better opportunities. Inflation. Remember what inflation is? You know that. Black Death, well, caused all these social issues. Kings raised taxes to try to finance wars, and church ideology, church preached equality to the masses. English peasant revolt. We have landlords try to collect higher fees from their tenant farmers and their peasants to try to increase their income because more and more people are dying, less food is being produced. Not a lot of things are being produced, period, because people are sick. The British government imposed poll taxes to help finance the Hundred Years' War, and unrest among the peasants led to English revolts. Okay, the Jacquerie was a peasant revolt in late medieval France in 1358 during the Hundred Years' War. The rebellion was named after Jacquerie after its peasants leader, also known as the Jacques Bonhomme, uh, Jack Goodfellow. Emerging Renaissance. Some historians believe that the Black Death helped to bring about Renaissance. Europeans changed their attitudes about the role of the church in science. People began to act more independently and were free to move to new markets and opportunities. A new class of craftsmen and tradesmen emerged and changed the balance of power between rich and poor. So you might be able to say that in essence the the Black Plague put an end to the feudal system. It put an end to a lot because a lot of people died and the lords weren't able to maintain their manners. Second, it put an end to the Pope's power. Or I shouldn't say put an end, but it significantly reduced the Pope's power, and also the Crusades as well is going to reduce the Pope's power, and that it's going to open up this time of Renaissance where people will be more free for some free thinking, etc. So, anyway, go ahead and write your one-page summary. If you have any questions, go ahead and email me or talk to me about it in class, and we'll see you then. Okay, bye bye.